This section is going to be on conservation and biodiversity. We're going to cover species interactions, causes of biodiversity loss, including the acronym HIPPO, endangered species and conservation efforts. We're going to look at three case studies here in Florida, and then we're going to look at some protected areas and habitat restoration examples. Looking at species interactions, first we have predation, where an organism, known as a predator, kills and consumes another organism. For example, wolves hunting deer. With competition, two or more species are competing for a limited resource. The image shown here, we can see this vine-like plant that's kind of structured in a way that it coats the other plants and prevents them from getting access to sunlight to photosynthesize. So this is a competition for sunlight. Then we have mutualism, where both species benefit from the interactions, such as bees pollinating plants. These interactions can also create leverage points, where protecting pollinators or restoring predators can impact a whole system and allow it to rebound. HIPPO is an acronym that summarizes modern extinction drivers. It stands for habitat loss, invasives, pollution, population, and as it relates to humans, and overexploitation. Each is visible in Florida. We have coastal development, which is habitat loss. We have lionfish and Burmese python, which are invasive species. There's nutrient-driven algae blooms, which are pollution. There's rapid growth in tourism, which is population increase. And we have overharvesting of plants such as longleaf pine. Conservation policies tend to target these specific levers because they can make some of the biggest impacts. Under the Endangered Species Act, agencies partner with states, tribes, non-governmental organizations, and landowners to list species or designate critical habitat and implement recovery plans. This framework stabilizes thousands of populations. It's most effective when it's backed with habitat protection, threat reduction, and, if needed, captive breeding or translocation. We're going to look at three different examples found here in Florida. The Florida panther experienced one of the most severe genetic crises in North American mammals. By the early 1990s, the population collapsed to fewer than 30 individuals, restricted to South Florida. This was largely cut off due to development in road networks, and the isolation led to extreme inbreeding, which caused a range of problems, including heart defects, kinked tails, and poor sperm quality. This put the species on the brink of extinction. To address the emergency, wildlife managers launched a genetic rescue in 1995 by introducing pumas from Texas into the Florida population. Although it was really controversial, the public feared it would cause genetic swamping and erase the unique Florida panther lineage. The goal, though, was to increase genetic diversity and mask some of those harmful recessive mutations that were accumulating because of that inbreeding. New research from 2025 showed that genetic rescue worked. The introduction of Texas pumas increased the genetic diversity and reduced the expression of those harmful mutations. And it also still preserved the distinct Florida panther ancestry. They remain genetically identifiable as Florida panthers rather than hybrids. Today, the wild population has rebounded to somewhere between 120 to 230 individuals, depending on the year and the type of survey method. Although this recovery is a major conservation success, long-term survival still depends on improving that habitat connectivity, such as creating wildlife corridors and reducing human-panther conflicts, especially collisions with vehicles and habitat loss. Next, we have key deer. They're the smallest subspecies of white-tailed deer that came dangerously close to extinction in the mid-20th century. By the 1950s, less than 20 animals remained in the Lower Key region of Florida, and this was due to extensive poaching and rapid habitat loss from development. In 1957, they established the National Key Deer Refuge, which helped the population rebound. And by the 2000s, numbers had climbed to about 800 to 1,000 individuals. In 2016, unfortunately, there was an outbreak of invasive New World screwworm, which killed about 135 deer, representing 9 to 20% of the entire population. Additional pressure, including Hurricane Irma in 2017, continued vehicle collisions, loss of freshwater resources, and ongoing sea level rise have put a lot of stress on this particular species. In response to the screwworm crisis, federal and state agencies acted pretty quickly. They deployed sterile insect techniques, provided medical treatment, and implemented access controls to limit the spread of the parasites. They were able to successfully contain it, and luckily this happened before the 2017 fawning season, which prevented what could have been a catastrophic population collapse. Refuge staff and partners organized and have continued working on habitat restoration. They've continued working on roadway improvements and other strategies aimed at reducing vehicle-related mortalities and supporting those long-term deer populations. Monitoring after the outbreak shows that key deer have had a strong recovery, although the distribution across the island and the lingering impact of the storm require continued attention. Looking ahead, greater long-term threats, such as climate change-driven floods of the low-lying islands, that's kind of more of a major concern at the moment. Management efforts are prioritizing maintaining the freshwater availability and protecting native vegetation, while also trying to reduce some human-wildlife conflicts. I know while I was down in the Keys, the photograph that I took, the deer were actually eating out of human garbage. So that's kind of one of those areas where reducing some of that human-wildlife conflict and preventing them from going near those areas that are highly populated can prevent some of those vehicle collisions. Finally, we have the Fuzzy Wuzzy air plant, and yes, that is its real name. This is a rare epiphytic bromeliad in South Florida. Its decline is mainly due to habitat loss, illegal collecting, and destructive Mexican bromeliad weevils. These air plants historically grew in humid tropical hammocks and cypress swamps across South Florida, but their range has become restricted and localized as weevil larvae kill the plants by boring into the base, causing collapse and death. In response, the state agencies and university researchers are working to document remaining populations and discourage poaching and study potential strategies for weevil control. Public outreach campaigns have emphasized the importance of avoiding wild collections and protecting wetlands and hammocks where the plants survive. Conservation areas such as Fakahatchee Strand preserves serve as an important stronghold, supporting some of the least healthy clusters of Florida native fuzzy wuzzies. And that's actually where I took this photo, was in Fakahatchee Strand. Some of the remaining clusters continue to persist where the habitat remains intact and poaching has been minimized. Long-term recovery depends on developing the effective weevil management strategies and maintaining the integrity of hammocks and cypress wetland microhabitats. These challenges make the species an excellent example for discussing plant conservation ethics and the importance of protecting those specialized microhabitat conditions that are essential for their survival. Next, we're going to take a look at some protected areas. These are usually monitored by different governmental organizations, but they can also be regulated by some non governmental organizations. The Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary protects America's only coral barrier reef, along with an extensive amount of seagrass meadows, mangroves, and historic shipwrecks that support 6,000 marine species. In January of 2025, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration finalized the restoration blueprint. And this major update to the sanctuary management occurred after 13 years of review. The plan expands the sanctuary from about 3,800 to 4,539 square miles. It adds more than 35 new management zones, strengthens rules such as prohibiting cruise ship discharge, increases authority to address derelict vessels, which are just ships that people left behind, and adjust boundaries to better protect habitat near the dry tortugas, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But parts of this sanctuary overlap with state waters. So for this reason, part of the plan is actually going to take place later. And that allows the Florida agencies to coordinate and implement different measures that can be done at a state level rather than relying strictly on federal levels. This is a really good example of what's called adaptive marine spatial planning. It shows how managers respond to coral reef decline and the seagrass damage and increasing boat pressure by adjusting those zones to balance for the most protection and public use. It also shows that ongoing state and federal coordination, especially around fisheries management and different phase closures, can remain essential. This sanctuary also addresses the invasive lionfish. So we previously talked about an invasive species. And it encourages public removal efforts and debris as a way of reducing the impact on reef fish communities. So you have state agencies, you have federal agencies, and now you have the general public that can come in and play a role in conservation. The Pinellas National Wildlife Refuge was established in 1951 and protects a cluster of small mangrove-covered islands off of St. Petersburg that serve as critical breeding habitat for colonial water birds. That term colonial just means they form little groups called colonies. The 394-acre refuge includes islands such as Indian, Tarpon, Mule, and Jackass Key. All of them are accessible only by boat, but are closed year-round to the public because of their small size and ecological sensitivity. The refuge was created specifically to safeguard nesting birds like brown pelicans, herons, egrets, and cormorants. Tarpon Key once supported the largest brown pelican rookery in Florida. The area surrounding the islands holds extensive seagrass beds, and by being closed year-round, it protects them from motorized boats and reduces the damage to the ecosystem. The Pinellas National Wildlife Refuge is managed as one of 3 Tampa Bay refuges and is coordinated through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Crystal River Complex. Management focuses on wildlife surveys, law enforcement, habitat protection, and partnerships supporting long-term conservation. So although it's closed to the public, it remains an essential sanctuary that preserves some of Tampa Bay's last undisturbed colonial bird nesting islands. Finally, we have the dry tortugas. This area is located about 70 miles west of Key West and forms a 7-island archipelago known for coral reefs, abundant marine life, and is really important for seabird nesting, including the only regular U.S. nesting colony of sooty terns on Bush Key. The area was first protected as Fort Jefferson National Monument in 1935 and later designated as the Dry Tortugas National Park in 1992. And this preserves both its natural ecosystems and its major historical feature, which is Fort Jefferson. This is the largest masonry coastal fort in the Western Hemisphere. If you take the ferry to the Dry Tortugas, you'll actually land on the island that contains this fort, and you'll see it makes up a massive portion of the island. There are some native plants that have started growing inside and on top of the actual fort. So some plants will actually dig into concrete structures, and this particular form of masonry, some plants actually thrive on it. The park includes some of the least disturbed coral reefs in the Florida Keys and supports sea turtles, tropical fish, and migratory birds, and contains one of North America's highest concentration of historic shipwrecks. It's accessible only by boat or seaplane, and the park's isolation has helped it maintain its ecological integrity. So while management focuses on protecting reefs, wildlife, and that cultural resource, which is the fort, um, it's largely water dominated and spans more. The last topic we're going to talk about is habitat restoration. This is where you take a previously damaged ecosystem and restore it into a productive community that supports life and supports the local community. One example of this is the St. Pete College Seminole Campus Nature Park. Sometimes it is closed due to regular maintenance and upkeep, but generally it's open to the public. It contains 40 acres of natural area, a 200-yard boardwalk, an outdoor teaching pavilion, and floating dock used for field studies. It protects wildlife, including nearly 200 bird species, reptiles, amphibians, butterflies, and common Florida mammals, such as raccoons, and possums, and marsh rabbits. It also has native plants such as slash pine, wax myrtle, sweet gum, and sand live oak. It also provides an important ecological service, which is flood mitigation. Pinellas County has the highest density human population in the state of Florida. And for that reason, there also tends to be a large amount of non-porous surfaces. So having areas such as this natural space that can collect large amounts of water helps reduce flooding in this area. If you want to learn more about this area, I created a story map that you can find in the supplemental materials section for this week. This story map talks about the history, ecology, some of the plant and animal species, but it expands those issues to the broader area and to the world itself. So you'll find a couple of resources in here as well that might be useful. There's a link if you or a family member is disabled and needs help evacuating during a hurricane or getting resources. There's information about Native American ethnobotany if you're interested in the undergraduate research program, or if you want to take part in the teaching apiary. So if you're interested in beekeeping, there's information on that as well. Lots of different resources to check out. So have fun with it. And if you would like to fill out the survey at the end and let me know how you feel about it, I would appreciate that as well.